Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to give you 5 reasons to read one of my new favorite books, Peter Darling by Austin Chant. This is an Own Voices reimagining of Peter Pan where Peter is queer and trans. In this version, Peter chooses to leave Neverland to attempt to reconnect with his family, but to do so he would have to live as Wendy. He eventually realizes that his home is a very toxic, unsafe place and that he's not being authentic and he's not being seen for who he is. Ultimately, he returns to Neverland, but when he does, everything is different. Many years have gone by and the Lost Boys don't recognize him, and they've taken on a new leader in his absence. Also, his presence has reignited an incredibly violent war between the Lost Boys and the pirates. As if that weren't enough, Peter also has to confront a strong, budding attraction to his lifelong rival, Captain James Hook. Fair warning, there are some flashbacks to Peter's home life where he is misgendered, dead-named, and overall treated very poorly, so be aware, it is in there, it's extremely brief, but it is present. Reason number 1 to read this book. This version affords Peter more depth and complexity than ever before, and with that comes a sense of completeness. I've always had a deep fascination with Peter Pan, but I've always felt like when it comes to his character, there's a missing piece. In every iteration of this story, Peter's all-consuming personality is consistently expressed. His energy is undeniable and infectious. He's charming, charismatic, manipulative, destructive, relentless, cruel, and almost gleeful about his cruelness. He's dramatic. His highs are high and his lows are very low, but we've never known why. This version finally supplies us with an answer as to where that manic energy stems from, and that's his past. Peter is understandably traumatized by his family's lack of acceptance, which has left him extremely fearful and lost in some ways. For years, he was in a position where he was always trapped and powerless. So he becomes a troublemaker, a daredevil. He becomes desperate for violence and adventure as a way to regain that sense of power, because he feels powerful when he can miraculously find a way out of dangerous situations. That's something that he wasn't able to do in his youth, so it gives him that heady rush of power that he's always chasing. It's something that he now craves and needs. And it feels amazing and right to finally get that backstory and fill in those missing gaps. Reason number 2. This story deftly challenges rudimentary understanding of what it means to be trans. This version of the story uses Neverland almost as a utopia. It's referred to as a place that is your truth, a place where you can live as the idealized version of yourself. So when Peter's in Neverland, he's able to live as a man, or at least he becomes what he thinks of as masculine, and as the story goes on, you see that his own understanding of what is quote-unquote male is imperfect. The story actually addresses toxic masculinity as the norm and how it's often a highly performative act. Peter is going through a lot of posturing. He's really leaning into those toxic norms as a means to almost overcompensate for his transness. You get those moments where you question whether he's playing up those violent, aggressive tendencies, whether the constant urge to fight and risk his life is just for show because that's what he thinks he has to do. Peter has a very baseline understanding that boys love getting into trouble and hurting each other, and that they gain a deep satisfaction from inflicting pain. And he actually says, this is what all boys love, right? And when the people around him challenge that idea, he gets defensive and says they're the ones who aren't being man enough, which is just a projection of his own insecurities. That really speaks to how trans people have to navigate multiple lenses. The physical is one thing, but it's also adjusting how you socialize and how you understand and present yourself. That's also part of what makes this emotional journey so powerful. The fact that Peter is trying to find that balance and working towards expressing an even truer self. To continue on with that train of thought, reason number 3 is that this book beautifully handles trans bodies and disabled bodies in a way that feels positive and safe. This story is so important because it affirms that there's no single body type that fits the mold for what it means to be trans. The quote-unquote ideal is entirely socially constructed. It's not about what parts you have or don't have. You can choose to modify your body or your style, or you could not. If you are trans, your body is a trans body and it's yours, and that's enough. That's something Peter is starting to realize as well, and it's almost cathartic to see him starting to move toward a healthier place. Also, this story is a romance. It does follow some conventional romance structures, and Peter and James are both romantically and sexually attracted to each other, so there are some sexual scenes, and I feel like those were handled in a way that was so perfect and safe. Typically, when a trans romance is not own voices, or even when a trans romance is being reviewed by someone who's not trans, I feel super gross because cis people tend to have an obsession with trans bodies to the point where they're almost fetishized, or the reveal of those bodies and their functions feels fetishized in many ways. And that hyper focus on which body parts are present or not present, what everything's doing, what's going where, what it looks like, what it sounds like, can be super triggering for trans folks who already have to do so much work just to be at ease with their own appearance. And yes, that is coming from a personal place. In that respect, this book is a completely safe space. There's a really wonderful ambiguity to Peter's physique. This book is free of that grotesque fascination with what parts look like what and what's touching what. It doesn't matter what parts he has or doesn't have, and the book never discloses that because it's not important to the narrative. Rather, the focus is just on this moment with James and how Peter feels. He's seeking his own pleasure, and that's what's at the forefront. And the same is also true for James, who we often forget is canonically a character with a disability, a man with a prosthetic or a form of prosthetic. There's no focus on what's quote-unquote missing for him. There's no concern about his hook being a distraction or a hindrance or a turnoff, and his disability has no bearing on the fact that he's a sexual person who will find a way to make this situation work. I can't say it enough. For both trans bodies and disabled bodies, people often read about them wanting some kind of checklist of what's there, what's not there, what everything looks like, when really it's none of your business. And I love that this story subtly and deftly saves its characters from being subjected to that experience. It's incredibly important, especially for readers who are looking for that safe space. Reason number 4, the story shows that there's more than one valid way to process trauma, and no one way is less. Peter and James are both dealing with the after effects of trauma, and you can clearly see that they're both handling it in different ways. Neverland, in some ways, is a safe space, a world of your own making, a world that creates itself around you to be exactly what you need in that moment. So that creates a sense of space and comfort, which is exactly what Peter needs. He needs that cushion, that distance to feel like he's in a place where he can no longer be hurt. And that's totally valid. You can be in a place where you want to completely separate the source of your trauma, where you realize that the only way for you to move forward is to not look back. And James is in a different place where he's beginning to remember what he went through, and he's realizing he doesn't want to forget that those experiences made him who he is. So these different ways of processing trauma are in conflict with each other, but neither is posed as less. And no matter how these characters choose to act as a couple, their process remains their own, which is really important. And there's another added layer with this idea that people change. Neverland doesn't. So how can these characters heal, grow, and evolve in this specific space? And reason number 5, the content of this novella is wholly original and unique while still remaining truthful to the source. The key to any successful fairy tale retelling is finding a way to take the familiar and make it new, to find a way to incorporate all these beloved landmarks and characters, but put your own unique stamp on it. All of the new twists and layers added to this world are extremely thoughtful and provocative and take the lore of Neverland to new heights. This book does not in any way rehash trademark scenes or even rely on familiar character dynamics, but rather brings new life and new meaning to this world and puts the characters in completely original situations that excite and provoke the senses. I love that this reimagining provides new adventures I never would have considered, and at some points even introduces original characters who I now feel very strongly about. And I think that just speaks to how well Austin Chant not only understands this world on a deeply emotional level, but how well he earns the reader's trust. It's very much the whimsical Neverland you know and love, but there's so much more added depth and urgency that makes it feel wholly unique and new, and I love it for that. So those are just 5 reasons to read this amazing book. I can't speak highly enough about all the ways Austin Chant succeeds in telling this story, and obviously I highly recommend it. But that's everything I had for this review/recommendation today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!